Orchid, what the heck is that? It's a new company that produces genome embryo reports through IVF. In other words, make sure that baby is perfect and flawless and abort them if he's not. My friend Katie Faust, come on, okay, a show favorite, joins the Seth Gruber Show again today to uncover this brand new technology furthering the view that babies are a commodity that have as much worth as a penny. We also discuss why Ukraine has such a huge surrogacy market. That's going to blow you away. The philosophical argument against IVS and more recent events revealing long-term consequences of the industry known as big fertility. This episode is one of my favorites that I've ever recorded. Fascinating conversation. I'm so excited to share it with you. Don't miss this entire episode. Give us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. You guys have been doing this for me. It means a lot because the podcast, iTunes, Purple app, like the show is shoved up the charts and it appears and more people see it. Okay. So if you're a listener of the show and you love the Seth Gruber Show, will you take 10 seconds, do me a favor, open your iPhone podcast app, Seth Gruber Show, 5 stars, and write a little encouraging review. As we're growing, more and more nasty reviews are coming in and people are trying to discredit the show. Go to Rumble and subscribe in case YouTube ever acts the show or digitally assassinates me. Rumble is where free speech lives, and please go subscribe there. And join us at the White Rose Resistance, okay? Go to the whiterose.life, okay? We're the fastest growing pro-life organization in the country. God has had his hand on the ministry. We honor him. This is a Christian pro-life ministry. All of our employees have to sign a statement of faith. We're trying to mobilize the church and get them to stand against the culture of death and save babies. Save the unborn, save the family, save America. That's how we're going to make America great again, actually. Okay, go to the whiterose.live, $35 a month. It's an ally, and you get your battle box in the mail to join the army, and you get our White Rose app, and you get courses, live calls, curriculum, training, turn you into a pro-life ninja, or sign up at $70 a month as air support, and you join our book club. And so yours truly and you, we read books together. We talk about them live on Zoom. We have a really fun time. We'd love to have you join us. Let's get into it. This is the Seth Gruber Show. Katie, welcome back to the show. We're going to call you Christo-fascist, Katie Faust. I don't actually know if I saw you labeled that, but every other word you can imagine. Apparently, it's the worst case of Christian theocrats. Like we're trying to rebuild a theocracy. That's what I'm reading about you and me. And
guilty.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
why kill children or sell children and need moms and dads? I know it's the most totalitarian thing you've ever encountered.
But isn't that the number one critique? Like that's what I see all the time about you and me and ministries that take bold stands and play hardball and push the needle when it comes to things like the sexualization of children, the killing of babies, reproductive rights, big fertility in your case, right? Or IVF or surrogacy. Like when you talk about those things, everyone's like, it's like, what was the old phrase? Like, keep your religion out of my vagina. Right. Or the whole thing. And it's like, oh, yeah, because the only reason someone could possibly think this is a bad idea is because they're a Christian. And yet, like your ministry, them before us, don't you get like interesting testimonials and feedback from all around the world from people who aren't Christians who hate what's going on? Like, tell us about this.
Yeah, well,
it's
people
fascinating.
Will say, you're just trying to impose your religion on me. And I'm like, I wrote an entire book, our entire first book that I co-authored with Stacey Manning. We talk about natural rights, studies about biology, gender differences, the whole kind of holistic understanding of what marriage is. We talk about divorce, same-sex parenting, sperm and egg donation, IVF, surrogacy, adoption. And you know how many Bible verses are in there? 0. Like we can and should make our case without appealing to special revelation. I can make that case based on general revelation, what the rest of the world will call natural rights and social science and research and the testimonies of kids. And of course, it aligns perfectly with the Word of God because the author of the Word of God is the author of the world of God as well. And so to me, it's just tactical. Like I am going to advocate based on, natural law to universal authorities that all of us recognize. But I think it's also very interesting that the people that are at the forefront of fighting for genuine human rights especially children's rights, their right to life, their right to not be bought and sold through the big fertility world, their right to their mother and father, their right to have an intact, unmedicalized body, their right to innocence. I think it's not an accident that all of those efforts are overpopulated with Christians. Even if we say this is a nonprofit ministry, like mine is, I don't run a Christian ministry, and yet so many of the people doing the work behind these human dignifying, child protecting missions are Christians, and that's not by accident.
Yep.
It's in my opinion, it's for two reasons. Number one, the Christian worldview is the scaffolding on which human rights were built and is maintained. And so you can sort of run off the fumes of the Christian worldview, but if you dig down far enough, like Ayaan Hirsi Ali has, you go, you really can't have this world of equality and flourishing and opportunity and genuine protection for women and children without Christianity. I mean, those go together. Right. But the other reason why I think that Christians overpopulate a lot of the culture war issues where there is such a severe cost, whether it's to your job or to your social group or, maybe even within your family, is because most of these carry a huge burden in terms of going up against the mob, right? Yep. At some point, if you're advocating on behalf of genuine human rights, especially children's rights, you're going to have to do battle with the mob. And mobs are fearsome. They really are. I mean, I personally don't like the mob. I don't even like one person that is coming up against me. And so the challenge is you have to fear something more than you fear the mob. And most people don't have anything on the earth that they fear more than the mob. You have to have something otherworldly that you fear more than you fear what's on this earth. And Christians have that. We have somebody who says, don't be afraid of them or I will make you afraid before them. So we have something that we fear more than man, more than approval, more than, getting the stink eye from the progressive gaze. We fear God. We do what he says, even if that means that the mob comes for you every now and then.
That's good. Katie, you made me think, have you ever read anything? Have you heard of Tom Holland?
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't read Dominion. Yeah. But I did like that thing where I can get the whole excerpt of the book in like 2 hours. So I listened to that. And obviously I've heard him.
Dominion's really good. It's powerful. Yeah. He was once asked on a radio or television interview network after Dominion. And sorry, for people listening, Dominion, he traces the shaping of the Western mind. And he starts just before Christ's birth. And goes through the modern age and then basically says, thank Christianity for everything. That's basically kind of what he says. And but he's not a Christian. He's probably an agnostic, I would guess, possible atheist. But he was once asked on this TV program, someone said, Tom, it sounds like you're defending Christianity. It sounds like you're arguing that this is a positive force. Are you a Christian? And he responded, almost persuadest thou me. Very interesting. But he has this line. He says, the ancient world was incredibly cruel. Most modern secular people do not realize how much they have absorbed a Christian worldview. Concepts like the rule of law and human rights do not go back to the Greek and Roman philosophers. They go back to the New Testament. But most of us no longer realize the ripple effects of the New Testament, and we just take them for granted. And so this whole idea to finish the circle out here, Katie, keep your religion out of my ovaries. Keep your rosaries out of my ovaries. Stop imposing your religion. It's like, actually, it's been a very good thing for Western civilization that Christians have imposed their religion through law to protect those that no one else was willing to protect. And that you kooky weirdo leftists now celebrate the actions of 200, 300, 500, 600, 700 years later, because you kind of like the idea of human rights and the rule of law when it protects you. but you're no longer willing to live that out in the protection of the kind of children that me and you, Katie, are trying to stand for. It's very interesting.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. Like you are riding off the fumes of a Christian car that spanned across Western civilization and brought with it freedom, prosperity, and genuine equality everywhere that it went. And now you want to like junk the car and think that you can continue in this world, without any, no.
Yeah.
It's like, again, Ion Husserli, it's a cut flower. It still looks okay, but there's no nourishment there. And that flower is fading and the petals are falling. So what are you going to do?
Guys, The Last Stand is going to come quick. I want you there on June 21st, 2025 in Downey, that's Southern California, Los Angeles County. The Last Stand, okay, thelaststand.com. We've got Pastor Jack Hibbs, David Harris Jr., Steve Dace, Pastor John Amanchukwu, the book banning pastor and the guest of the 1916 Project, Alex Clark, Riley Gaines, Heidi St. John, who else? Victor Marks, Jaco Boyens, Worship with 10th Avenue North. We're bringing revival to California because California is always, unfortunately, for a long time, the testing ground for all of our nation's evils. And we need to begin exporting revival and protection for children to the rest of the country instead of filth. Come experience bold worship, powerful speakers, Taking Back June. Taking Back June is Life Month. And fellowship with like-minded believers and culture warriors from around the country who know that the fight for the future is the fight to abolish abortion and protect our children. Go to thelaststand.com and get your tickets today and use code SETH10, SETH10 for 10% off your tickets. Thelaststand.com. I'll see you on June 21st. Katie, there's so much insanity going on. There's so much to talk about, and you're such a good voice and kind of defender of children on all these things. I just did an episode, Katie, on this article in MIT Technology Review, saying it's called "Ethically Sourced Spare Human Bodies Could Revolutionize Medicine."
I saw it and I didn't read it.
I read the whole thing. I just did an episode on it, Katie, and they're talking about bodyoids. They're calling them bodyoids could be coming, which is like the 2005 film The Island with Scarlett Johansson and Ewan McGregor, where they find out that they're actually clones that rich people have created for spare parts. But that's literally what they're now celebrating, Katie. But they're saying, oh, first they go, well, don't worry. They won't be actual humans because we have new technology that allows us to mimic the structures of embryos without using sperm and egg. But then later on, they do talk about something that sounds a lot like somatic cell nuclear transfer, like Dolly, the cloned sheep from the early 1990s. But, we've never successfully done it with human beings. I think it's illegal anyways. But they talk about like turning off, they talk about the genetic techniques to inhibit brain development. So basically envisioning bodyoids that aren't self-aware or can't think, human bodies, but don't worry, they're not persons. And so how does this get pulled off? Well, these are going to be artificial wombs. Right. So and then there's this New York Times article that just came out about basically sounds like eugenics. There's so much going on. What are you seeing right now at Them Before Us and breaking edge technologies, where things are going and being developed that end up always being a harm to children and children's rights first? Because I can't keep track of all the headlines and new innovations. So help our audience out.
Yeah, there's so much tech. I'm not even able to keep up on it. Like I said, I saw the humanoids. Like, hey, great. Since we don't have like
bodyoids,
we don't have like farms of Uyghurs out in the eastern parts of our country, or I guess that's the western part of their country that we can just harvest organs from, because China doesn't have the same kind of shortage in organs that we do, for a terrible reason. And so what is the solution? I mean, I'll just, we can go through some of the egregious examples of things that are on the horizon. You mentioned a lot of them already. And then some ethicist needs to get in here and really, really give us some very clear boundaries. Because I'm the one that goes, don't do that, don't harm the kids. Nope, don't do that.
Right.
And get somebody in here who can just be like underlying, Okay, so Orchid, let's talk about Orchid, which is this whole genome examination of the babies that you are creating in vitro so that you can, according to the founder who just posted, published in New York Times, posted this big Twitter thread that's totally gone viral, that she talks about how, her big quote is, sex is for fun embryo screening is for babies. So her idea is have
Wow.
recreational sex. That's what sex is for. But sex isn't for babies, because if you make babies with sex, you won't be able to screen them. You might get a dud. I mean, you might get a child who's stupid, or you might get a child that could possibly be at risk for cancer or heart disease or something, like humans have been all throughout history. And so she's like, don't take that risk. You want to be able to genetically screen your child. And you're not just talking about the routine pre-implantation genetic screening that happens at 75% of clinics in IVF today that kind of screens for things like chromosomal disorders. She's talking about like mapping the genes of every embryo to determine like, are they at risk for the things she risks, early schizophrenia, blindness, early cancer, heart defects, right? Like really make sure you don't want to, really what she's saying is like, you don't want a defective product, do you?
Yeah.
And, they talk about how you don't want a child that's born with the disease we could have prevented. So those are the words that they're using. And so it kind of conjures up these ideas for the reader of, well, I don't want a child born with the disease that could be prevented. But you're not talking about healing. You're not talking about seeing a child that has the possibility of developing cancer and then healing them. You're talking about creating 15 embryos, screening them, and eliminating any of the children that looks like they could be at risk for early cancer. This is not a healing technology. This is a eugenics technology. This isn't something where we are trying to rectify something that has gone wrong. It is something where we are eliminating the people that we believe to be wrong. Now, this is just another step in the IVF process because this is happening to a lesser degree pretty routinely in most IVF cycles. We already are eliminating children based on things that can be a little less specific, like sex or like some very egregious, obvious genetic problems. But she's talking about really getting into the weeds and in essence, specifying what kind of children you exactly want. So this should alarm all of us. Again, this is not a technology that is going to be healing children. It is a technology that allows you to specify exactly the kind of children that you want at the time that you want them.
Designer
and discard
babies.
the ones that don't meet your requirements.
Yeah, designer babies.
Designer babies. And then, of course, you get into...
How developed is that technology right now? Don't they call it CRISPR?
No, she's totally doing. So CRISPR is different. CRISPR is editing the genes of an embryo. Okay. So developing the embryo, allowing the embryo to develop, and then editing out the genes so that at least you could maybe consider to be some kind of reparative. But of course, once you tinker with some part of the gene, you don't know what other parts of the genetic code you're also going to be changing. And you're not going to know that. And if it's something terrible, well, guess what? You've just actually altered the gene pool for all of humanity if those children go on to reproduce. Now that genetic mutation alteration is going to be taken on throughout the lineage of that child. So CRISPR is different. It's gene editing. It's also designer babies. It's also very concerning. This is just whole cloth genetic screening and only allowing the desirable children to be born. So you've just mentioned two kind of terrible dystopic examples. Another one that I think that it was alluded to in the article, I haven't had a chance to read yet, about the humanoids, is this, they're not really going to be human. So the one that I think that they're talking about there is, because if there's no embryos, what they're talking about is in vitro gametogenesis, not IVF, in vitro fertilization, but in vitro gametogenesis, where you're actually not creating a child using a sperm and an egg cell that's coming from a man and a woman. Now you're creating a gamete from some other part of the human cell, from a blood cell or from saliva or a hair follicle. And now you're creating probably like an egg cell from somebody's skin instead. Now,
that's how
this would be really, really helpful for the fertility world because eggs are hard to get to. And it's very challenging for single men or double men or triple men who don't have an egg to provide, but really would like to have a biological connection to the child. So in a same-sex couple, a man can contribute the sperm and another man could contribute a saliva sample that they could develop a gamete from and then combine those two, and then two men could be the biological parents of the child. So in their world, they're like, well, this is great because this serves our needs. Of course, then the child truly is I mean, who knows whether or not these babies are even going to be able to survive? They've tried it successfully in mice. That's still a pretty big jump from mice to human.
So I've
But
heard of this, Katie, but I haven't studied it like you have, but I've heard of this about, gay guys want both of their DNA in the kid. So in this case, if this was done successfully, because I want the audience to make sure that like we understand what you're actually describing, there's still a female gamete. There's still a female oocyte. It's still an egg that they've purchased from some woman, or maybe it's a good friend of the gay guys or something that gives her egg or whatever. But then it's it's Pete Buttigieg's sperm, but then it's Chasen's skin cell, and somehow it becomes a DNA soup that creates the kid. Is that?
There's no egg. No, there's no egg. So here's the problem. In the baby assembly process, you need sperm, egg, and womb. Sperm, we don't really need to try to replicate. Or sperm is easy to access, it's plentiful, and it's cheap. Eggs are hard to get to. And it's actually pretty medically risky for the woman to pump herself full of hormones to the point where she's not releasing one egg, but 10 or 20 or 25.
No, I was told that was fake news by the media, that's super safe and chill.
If only we knew, Seth, because we actually don't have anybody studying the health risks. We have documentaries like from the Center for Bioethics and Culture that show like exploitation, the fallout for many women who did donate their eggs, but we don't have a lot of medically documented risks because big fertility doesn't actually care to keep track of that information. We aren't able to provide informed consent for women because we have not, unlike organ donation, we don't study these kinds of things, which is nuts.
Same thing with the abortion industry. That's why the data on like women's health from abortions is so hard to put together and get accurate data, because like big fertility doesn't care about the surrogate, the abortion industry doesn't care about the mother, and it's very difficult to put together. But sorry, keep describing this then. How do you create a baby without an egg?
So the problem is that you can get sperm, eggs are hard to get to. Wombs are very hard to get to. So you need those three things, sperm, egg, and womb. So what big fertility really needs is they need to get women out of this process altogether.
But first, we'd like to thank our amazing sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper Company. EveryLife.com, Every Life Matters. But most pro-abortion diaper companies don't believe that. They don't think every life matters. And most of the diaper companies in America, like Huggies, Coterie, like all these other ones, did you know they like fund the abortion industry? Or that after Roe v. Wade, they were like, we're going to pay for our female employees to travel to blue Democrat-run states to get abortions. It's like, what the heck is wrong with you? That's called the woke mind virus, okay? It makes you go, woohoo, cuckoo. Okay, you can't save the babies and protect babies if like Christians, who are having most of the babies, are spending their money for their babies at pro-abortion companies that hate you and your values, okay? Like, that's not going to work. If we're going to rebuild a culture of life, it's going to start with our dollars and our spending habits. And so I want you guys to get all of your diapers, okay? The nursery at your church, your pregnancy center, your children, your adult children that are giving you grandbabies. Come on, tell them all. This is so easy. EveryLife.com, promo code Seth10 for 10% off your first order. Baby wipes, diapers, and now non-toxic, like awesome shampoo baby washes for those cute little bottoms. EveryLife.com, promo code Seth10 for 10% off your first order. And it lets them know that we sent you, and that supports the Seth Gruber Show and Every Life as well. They give thousands of free diapers away when there's natural disasters. I know the founders. They're wonderful people. Even if it ends up being a little more expensive, which I think we spend about the same. It's that's why it's amazing. But even if it's a little more, we need to do that, okay? Because we have to defund woke corporatism and these companies that hate us and our values. EveryLife.com, promo code Seth10. Thank you, Every Life.
Men, there's always going to be endless supply of sperm. Plenty of guys that are happy to fertilize you for free, if you know what I'm saying, okay? Yeah. But the eggs are hard to get to. They're medically risky for women. It's painful oftentimes. There's a recovery for it. Wombs are very hard to get to. So they are working to try to eliminate the need for women when it comes to the egg and women when it comes to the womb, because both of those are hard to get to and too expensive. So you want to talk about cost-cutting measures. You've got to figure out a way around the egg and the womb problem. So one way around the egg problem is to create, in essence, egg cells using some other cell from the body, some other soma cell. So you can get
From
that
a woman?
from anybody.
Wow.
So that's why this is crazy. Like if you can scrape off a skin cell from a guy, you could create something approximating an egg cell and then fertilize it with a sperm and
Is
then
that
create
possible?
a baby. They are working on it. So it's become possible. That's what I'm saying. They've done this in mice. They
Wow.
haven't done it in humans. That's IVG. So keep your ears open for IVG people.
That's insane, Katie.
And-
Because I'm familiar, the old school stuff was somatic cell nuclear transfer, where you remove the nucleus of a female oocyte of an egg.
Yeah.
And then
So
you
the
would put in
mitochondria-
like maybe a dude's skin cell or pluripotent stem cell or something, and then they would attempt gestation or fertilization with, but they did it with Dolly the sheep, and then I think there's laws against it because I don't know if we really want to be cloning people. But like if that was possible, like Pete Buttigieg could create an identical twin, but you still have to have an egg. But what you're saying is no female oocyte.
They want that, right? And then Pete Buttigieg can be mother and father. He can provide the sperm, and they could create an egg cell out of his skin. Okay, I mean, like, I hope that you guys are processing.
Wait, that would be the ultimate biological, utopian dream for the transgender movement. Now someone could literally be mommy and daddy. My God.
Well, but it's not enough. So you want to talk about the trans threats. So they obviously are they have successfully transplanted wombs from one woman to another woman. But obviously the trans community is excited about the possibility of transplanting a womb into a man.
Because nature's a bigot.
Yeah, not because it would be good for the child. It's because the biggest strain of men who transition, as you know, is a form of transgenderism called autogynephilia, which is the arousal of seeing yourself as a woman. And so that is why they don't just want to dress up as women. They want to be women. They want to invade female spaces. They want to have their genitals waxed at a female, salon.
Yeah.
They want to experience a baby growing in the womb. They want a baby to suckle on their nipples and, imbibe some kind of chemical excretion so they can say that they're breastfed. I mean, like all of this is it's a sexual fetish, right? And so they don't just want to be the genetic mother and father. They want everything. They want the womb. They want the chest feeding. They want all of that. I mean, it's okay. And we could keep going. Like, I would actually encourage your listeners to go back and listen to the episode that Seth and I recorded about artificial wombs. It was one of the first times that I've really ever talked about it in an interview form.
Yeah, it was powerful, yeah.
So look, your desire to help infertile couples have children through making babies in a laboratory, it's probably well-meaning. But do you understand what is coming down the pike here? And if you believe that that people are owed children, that they deserve children, that they have a right to children, if you believe that you're going to keep that door open for IVF, for those few couples that are going to conduct IVF in a way that doesn't destroy any child's right to life, right to their mother and father, no surrogate is being used, nobody's being frozen, genetically screened, you're living in a fantasy land if you think that that's where those technologies are going to stay. Like, money is driving this industry. Hedonism is driving this industry. Sexual identity is driving this industry. And your little pro-life carve-out is not strong enough to buttress against that.
Yeah, I mean, I try to make this point to the pro-life movement and followers and donors, Katie. It's like the one ethical little way that you could do IVF, you're not going to maintain that one legal loophole while banning all the other ones that we agree are wrong. It's just not going to happen. Katie, I was just up in your neck of the woods at a great church called Experience Church in Puyallup. When were we there? God
bless those suburbs. God bless those outlying areas.
In March, just last month. And there's a couple really powerhouse churches up there. Not enough to stem the tide. We need more. But there's one in Edmonds. There's one in
you were in
Gig Harbor. There's one in Puyallup, and this new tour I've been doing, Katie, is I've been talking about how basically Gnostic dualism and body self dualism and Gnosticism is the animating feature behind all of these issues, from homosexuality to gay marriage, to the redefinition of parenthood, to abortion, to euthanasia, doctor-assisted suicide, to transgenderism, and to transhumanism. I have to do that sermon in about 45 minutes, usually 50 minutes. It's very difficult, but I tell your story and reporting about the New York couple, the gay couple, and the redefinition of parental rights. And then I also sometimes, if I'm feeling particularly spicy from the pulpit, I'll actually use surrogacy as an example. And the Biden administration 2.5 years ago, when the CDC said that healthcare providers need to start helping autogynephilic, gender-confused men to grow breasts and lactate some kind of excretion so that they can feel like mommies. And I said that checks two of the left's boxes and historic priorities over the last 100 years, which is autogynephilia and pedophilia.
Oh, sure.
And you could go back to Kinsey. We could go back further than Kinsey and see that the left has always been obsessed with those two things. We can go back to the worship of Ishtar if you'd like. But I feel like I need to now start incorporating into this message that not only is this a flipping of the cultural mandate upside down, Genesis 1 upside down, all of these things upside down. Not only do they think nature is a bigot, they want to eradicate all distinctions between the sexes, but they actually want to make it biologically feasible that a dude could be both mommy and daddy and erase any female biological DNA ties in the creation of a child. Like we're on, like what you've just said, Katie. I want everyone listening. I don't know if you understand how prescient this woman is in her ministry, which is why you should go support them before us. Okay, this is like breaking edge stuff of where the culture's going. And if the church doesn't wake up and begin to get involved against this stuff, Trump is not big enough, mean enough, and powerful enough to provide a bulwark against this stuff.
And he's not.
Where are we, Katie? What the hell is going on? Help us out.
And Trump needs to be led on this. Don't let him lead you. He needs to be led. Like he's wrong about IVF.
You and I didn't talk about his IVF executive order. Oh my gosh.
And, I will be curious to see what comes of that, because it's interesting. He came out very much in support of IVF after the Alabama Supreme Court decision last February, and he called himself the daddy of IVF and all of that. And so, he issued this executive order, like, we're going to make it more accessible and more affordable. And
he was saying, make IVF great again.
Yeah. And he expected everybody to celebrate. But interestingly, there was a lot of significant pushback, I think, externally and internally. So I will be curious to see what ends up happening with that executive order, whether it was just a opportunity for them to say promises made, promises kept. Because internally, I think a lot of people, like within their own administration and the voices that they respect, might be urging some caution. And it very, very clearly overrides a lot of the priorities of MAHA. Like, there's a reason why we are seeing, so many people struggling with infertility. The main reason why is social. We're getting married too late, and especially women are starting to have children in their 30s and 40s rather than in their 20s when they're kind of peak fertile. A lot of that is the negative, distorted messaging that we're giving women about what matters to them and what to pursue in their early life. But a lot of the reason why we're seeing a rise in infertility is environmental. Has to do with our overall health. If you're obese, if you're overweight, that's one of the biggest hindrances to getting pregnant. And we have a chronically obese culture. There's all kinds of other environmentally or nutritionally contributed causes that can lead to infertility.
Keep going.
Why don't you deal with that first, right? Like, get the MAHA done first before you circumvent your body's natural processes and turn to IVF.
Katie, so you were talking about the people who are unhealthy because they're overweight. But on the flip side of that, what's this? What's the flip side of that? The obsession with being so healthy and fit and looking so sexy and good that you're pumping yourself full of stuff. Yeah. Breast augmentation, lips, how so many women are into bigger lips. There are a lot of women who are like, my wife and I look at these who are like, you're not even attractive anymore. Why did you think that was a good idea? But they want bigger butts, bigger breasts, and smaller noses and bigger lips. I'm sorry. That's just what's happening. And there's a lot of young women who are spending money pumping them full of stuff. Are we supposed to believe, Katie, that has no impact on her overall health and hormonal balances, which affects her fertility? So it's on both ends. It's like I don't care. I'll eat whatever I want because I don't care how I look. And now I struggle with infertility because I'm overweight. Or I want to have a flat stomach and rock hard abs and big, body parts. And now I can't have kids either. Like that's a real thing. Am I right?
Well, I don't know about the infertility connection, but I know that many women, especially with different kinds of implants, are experiencing a lot of autoimmune responses to it. There's like a breast implantation illness that a lot of women are talking about. That again, when you ask doctors, is this something that they're like, well, who knows? We don't really know. But it's kind of like the autism thing, I know that there's no studies that say that vaccines cause autism. And yet I saw my child go completely nonverbal within 48 hours of his, MRA. His MMR shot. And
that's right.
It's like, parents know, you kind of know what's going on.
It's the same thing with Wuhan Institute of Virology. Oh no, it came from a wet market that sells bats down the road. Right. Not at the lab that was experimenting. And we're like, no, I think it was probably that. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So I think that back to IVF, right now, there's already a lot of confusion with IVF where it is at this moment. And that confusion is going to pave the way for much darker technologies. If we cannot really figure out how to talk about this now, how are you going to talk about artificial wombs? If people have a right to IVF and a right to parenthood and a right to children, and you codify that right, whether it's culturally or legally, there is no stopping creating babies from somebody's, skin cells. There is no stopping factory floors of, machines that are gestating children. Figure out right now who children are, what they have a right to, what they need, and start defending it, even if it offends some of your friends, even if it means maybe you don't get what you want in the moment. You are doing, if you're a Christian especially, what God calls you to do, which is primarily be concerned with child protection.
Yeah. I mean, because all of these various technologies and innovations, I hope you guys are kind of picking up on this with my conversation with Katie. They all coalesce. They all overlap. So this article from the New York Times, it says this baby was carefully selected as an embryo. Her mother screened for gender and health during IVF. And again, this is the company you said is called Orchid, the world's first whole genome embryo screen. And again, part of the reason is because women are waiting so long to have babies because they, I wanted to climb the corporate ladder like the males in this country, and I delayed having kids so I could go with Slay Queen and make a ton of money. Thank you, Betty Friedan, for all your lies. And now I want babies, right? Okay, so now we need better IVF technology so that people who waited too long can now have babies. But wait, maybe it's like Monica in Friends, in an episode where she just decides, I don't want to wait for a guy. I'm just going to be a single mom. So what if a single mom wants to do something, but maybe it's too dangerous. Maybe she's in her 40s. It's too dangerous for her to go through pregnancy. Don't worry, artificial wombs are here. And leftist scientists and our scientific betters, Katie, they've been celebrating and kind of waving the flag for the last couple of years. They're saying that we're not that far away from artificial wombs. I mean, what does this do? Let's say this became a reality in the next 20 years. What does the generation of 2070 or 2080 look like when they're 15 years old? I mean, you've used a phrase before, genealogical bewilderment. If we go the route of artificial wombs, you're talking about the first human beings ever who did not come from a human. Mm-hmm. They have no human relationship in the gestational period or at point of birth. What kind of humans will we be creating? Has anyone thought about this? Besides you.
There's a lot of people that have thought about it, and a lot of people are celebrating it. A lot of people will say, well, this is the solution to abortion. because a woman has unplanned pregnancy. She doesn't want to continue carrying it. Great. C-section, take that baby out, put it in an artificial womb. Now she doesn't have to be pregnant, and the pro-lifers don't see a baby's life destroyed. So they look at that and they're like, oh, this is a win. You have people on the right who will say, well, this is a way to make sure that premature babies can continue to gestate so the mom can't carry it beyond 22 months. And so now we're going to put it in an artificial womb. And I'm like, okay, those are possibilities for sure. And that might be the one sort of restorative application of this technology. But do you understand when I say that those three different components of the baby making process, sperm, egg, and womb, I'll tell you what, big fertility is the most excited about cutting women out of the gestating process, because that is the hardest component to find. You can find 22-year-old co-eds that want to donate their eggs so that they don't have to take out college loans. I mean, yeah, maybe it's going to mean that they're never going to be able to have biological children themselves, and their only genetically related child are going to be raised by rich people over in Spain, a gay couple or whatever. But they are easier to get to, eggs, than wombs. Like, this is why you see the fertility industry move from economically desperate country to economically desperate country, because they know that those women there are willing to rent out their bodies for really close to 10 years if you include all of the different injection prep that you have to go to, and then the healing post C-section, that where the baby very often doesn't come along with the baby's timing, but scheduled by the intended parents who want to fly in on the day, be there for the birth, and take the child home. So I mean, like, this is it. You're off your body.
So the surrogacy industry and big fertility, Katie, can you say that again? Their primary geographical focus is in the most economically poor countries?
So right now, 25% of the global surrogacy industry is in Ukraine. And it's been like that since about 3 or 4 years. Even after the war began, you're still seeing the highest percentage of surrogates globally in Ukraine.
Oh my gosh. So they're just big fertility stoked. They're stoked.
Big fertility is like, you even had some, after the war started, when you had all those abandoned babies because people could not get to their surrogate children. So you had these rooms full of babies, in bassinets waiting for their parents to arrive, but they couldn't get there because, war. And,
their biological parents. Obviously, the birth mom is in the country.
Birth mom is there, but she's off taking care of her other 3 children because she did that so she could get paid to pay the expenses while her husband was at the front line, or maybe he had already been killed in the war with Russia. So this is what you see. Like right now, the Philippines is emerging as a hot spot for surrogacy. Mexico is very hot for surrogacy. Nigeria is a growing market. And like, what do all of these things have in common? Women that need money.
Wow.
That's it. And so you saw, especially through like 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, you would have countries like Cambodia and Thailand and Nepal and India open their doors wide to fertility clinics because they're like, well, this is great. This is a way for our ordinary women who maybe don't have a lot of education, but darn it, they know how to breed a baby. This is a way for them to make money. And one by one, all of those different countries ended up shutting their doors to surrogacy because they ran into situations where they were like, we're selling children and we are renting out the wombs of women, and this is exploitation of both. So you saw countries open their doors wide, see some kind of a crisis or catastrophe, and then shut them down again. And big fertility just moves on to the next country with generally brown women who really need money.
Wow. This artificial womb stuff freaks me out. You know what? I'm starting to see a common denominator here, Katie. I'm just going to say it. The erasure of women.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Why is that a common denominator with all this stuff?
Well, and it's like, I would say it's the erasure / commodification of women's bodies. And I'm not the big women's activist because I actually think that the feminist arguments against a lot of these things break down. In fact, you do see a true split among feminists on whether they're for surrogacy or against surrogacy, for sex work, against sex work. Some are like, this is exploitation. No, it's liberation and freedom. But I think that it's very interesting that generally there is a stigma against prostitution, and we understand that it is fundamentally abusive and exploitative. And yet, like, that's a marketplace for women's body parts. That's what it is. It's their external body parts. But there is a market for every kind of distinctive that the female body has to offer. So we have a market for prostitution, for their external organs. We have a market for the eggs that they provide from their ovaries. We have a market for the wombs where they gestate the child. I mean, like, it's interesting that every distinct aspect of the female body, there's now a market for that.
Well, and then if you kill little women in utero, you can also sell their organs. And Francis Collins, the best friend of Rick Warren, Tim Keller, and Russell Moore, and Ed Stetzer, the dean of Talbot Theological Seminary at Biola University, he'll help provide record-level funding for harvesting the organs of little boys and girls killed in utero. But with big fertility, third-party reproductive technologies, and transgenderism, I'm starting to see the erasure of women as the common denominator. I mean, I guess use them, discard them. Isn't that interesting? But this whole idea of artificial wombs, Katie, I'm thinking like if we start doing this and like the West doesn't wake up and the church doesn't wake up and really get involved to ban all this stuff and to stop it right now, technically, plausibly, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not. Like you can get it. Well, the whole stuff with like no female oocyte, I don't know about that yet. But if you have a female egg and then you got a rich gay dude sperm, okay, there you go, IVF. But now you're implanting it in an artificial womb. Like every child for all of human history has had this beautiful biological maternal link with a human. From the point of creation until natural birth. Not always beautiful unless if the mom's a drug addict or alcoholic and she's poisoning the kid. But otherwise, it's a beautiful, natural, biological, maternal link from the moment you come into existence. Like we're now in the realm of the spiritual, Katie, and the realm of the metaphysical. What does that do? Like how does a human like that function? Would they be like a psychopath that has no empathy? Or I don't really like the term empathy, there's been great, Allie Bestucky wrote a great book about it. But would they have these human traits like compassion and love and joy? And like, these are, I don't know where we're venturing right now, Katie.
So there's a few things here. It's interesting because we already do in some ways have motherless children. At least that's what people are telling their kids. So, you can follow these TikTok accounts or these Instagram accounts of 2 dads or 3 dads. And, sometimes they'll get their kids on camera and they say, what do we say when people ask you, do you have a mom? And they'll turn to the kids and be like, we don't have a mom. We have 3 dads. And so like you already have this world where we're training kids to think they don't have a mom. But the truth is they actually do. Now, maybe they're split in two. Maybe there's a genetic mom and a birth mom. Maybe there's just one. Maybe it's an adoptive mom or, a birth mom that gave their child up for adoption. But it's interesting because a friend of mine has done foster care for decades. And he's had dozens of kids come through his house trying to be a temporary place so they can be reunited with their birth parents if possible. He did end up adopting 3 of them. And he said, without fail, every single child that came to our house, whether they knew their birth mother or not, whether it was abusive, whether they came from a home where there was just neglect and there wasn't outright abuse, every child, without exception, said, where's my mother? 100% of them wanted to know. Not all of them asked about their father.
It's like the Dr. Seuss book. Are
What?
you my mother? It's like the Dr. Seuss book.
Yes.
Are you my mother?
Yes. Okay, so that's it. It is so foundational to what it means to be a human child, to want to know who their mother is. So it's a disservice to children, to put it mildly, to intentionally separate them. But what would happen if we gestate them in a machine completely? Now, I assume, as we talked about on our previous episode, you are going to have robot nannies that are adjusting nutrition and oxygen levels based on what the child needs. I assume that they're going to have some kind of tape recorded sound so the child can have information about the language they're going to hear. I assume there's going to be some light and darkness. I assume that they're going to try to replicate the movement of women. I mean, you're going to have to do all of that. Children's muscles are developed as the mother stands up and moves around. I mean, like...
Right.
Everything.
That's what I'm saying. We're in another realm that I don't even know how to describe. It's a whole other realm.
But I actually don't know, even with all of those like mechanical adaptations, I think it would be years before you could get a child that would survive the process. It is so core to what it means to be human, to be relationally connected and relationally dependent.
Yeah.
Like in a physical sense, like it has to be human contact. And when you do not have that human contact, and I wrote an article at Public Discourse a year ago about artificial wombs, and I talk about how I went to an orphanage where children were clothed, fed, had their nails trimmed, they were bathed, they just weren't touched. Nobody was looking at them. And these children emotionally shut off. They actually didn't respond to normal stimuli because they had not had the kind of maternal interaction that they needed on this side of the womb, which is supposed to happen dozens of times a day for a child. They're supposed to voice some kind of distress, whether it's fear, cold, hunger, wet, and they cry and they get an immediate response. And that teaches them human connection and human development. And if you do not have that in your earliest, there's a window where you can teach that kind of attachment, develop that kind of attachment. And if you do not have it, children will turn off those signals. And that's where you get like reactive attachment disorder, where children aren't, even once they get placed in a home where there's stability, love, connection, assurance, they're not able to form those stable attachments because you missed that window of human connection. So now take it back, not in the 9 months after birth, but the first 9 months of formation, and you do that without any human interaction. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if kids would survive it.
Katie, talk about how many viral videos we've seen or stories we've seen, or your personal experience, where a newborn baby screaming bloody murder is immediately calmed only by the voice, audible, and touch, physical, of their mother.
I know. And it just gets you. I mean, like, I've got my story.
Is that a coincidence? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it's like that is the only, I mean, is there any, maybe you can help me think of an analogy. What would it be like for you to be picked up and put down in an environment that was completely foreign, like another planet with different air, different light, different temperature, like a different ground that you're standing on, different gravitational pull. And everything was unfamiliar. And then there's one thing that reminded you of Earth. What was it? Like your cat? And how much would you need that cat? Because it was the only thing that you knew. And you, with a fully developed awareness and brain development and all of that, that's what a newborn has gone through, except it's not their cat they need. It is the thing that used to envelop them. And when they touch that is what quiets them. That is what soothes them. And it is the mother. It is only the mother. And I will say it is the birth mother. Even if that child is not genetically related, the baby has no idea that they were just grown in the body of somebody who is not their genetic mother. It is still her body, her voice, her smell, her touch.
Yeah. Makes no difference to the baby, right?
Makes no difference to the baby.
Maybe the first time I had you on the show, Katie, or second time, you might be the most familiar guest at this point. I think we've had you on more than any other guest.
Hopefully people are now donating to you rather than withdrawing their donations when I come on. I hope you guys are. I might or may not have gotten a sneak peek of Seth's new project, and you should support it.
Yeah. I mentioned that I was in Paris and London, and we have something big coming. But I think maybe the first or second time you were on, I told you the story of some old friends in the city I grew up in Los Angeles, and went to church with them. Okay, whatever, grew up, right? We go our separate ways, but, our parents were friends growing up. And one of these young women, she was a surrogate for her brother. And so I got into this whole social media thing because I think I posted our episode, and they did not like what we had to say because it was personal for them. And I don't think I was persuaded in getting them to see that, like, that was traumatic. That was a traumatic thing you did to that child. Because the child doesn't know that their auntie is not their biological mother. You're just mom at that point. It's the only human being that baby has a relationship to. And so, as you've pointed out, what we've done in third-party reproductive technologies is we've split mom into 3 people. Can you talk about that? Because, like, when you phrase it that way, it's really sobering. And for the Christian who understands Genesis 1 and 2, like, we should not be down with that.
Yeah. That's the best way, I think, for people to understand why surrogacy is always harmful to children, because we like to think, well, it's okay as long as it's a heterosexual couple. The problem is when the gays do it. No, there's always a problem. What surrogacy does is it splits what should be one woman mother into 3 purchasable and optional women. The first one is the genetic mother, the egg donor that grants children their biological identity. The second one is the birth mother that forms that critical attachment to the child. And the third is the social mother who provides that female-specific love every day of the child's life. So from the child's perspective, none of these women are optional. You lose your genetic mother, you struggle with identity issues. You lose your birth mother, you struggle to trust and attach. You lose your social mother, and you are not going to have well-rounded development. And you're probably going to hunger for female love for the rest of your life. Okay.
Wow.
So surrogacy allows you to cut out at minimum the birth mother, oftentimes the genetic mother, and many times the child goes home to a motherless home. So
Wow.
Very interestingly, last week I was filming for our documentary that's going to be released early next year, and I was filming with Olivia Morel. That's how she's French. And I'm like, is it Morel? And she's like, it's Morel. And I'm like, okay, great. So she was born through surrogacy. She was raised by very wealthy parents. So, you've always got the kid's going to be rich and she's got a mother and father. She's going to be fine. So she was rich. She had nannies. She went to the best schools. She split time between America and a chalet in Paris. And all her life, she struggled to feel wanted and tried to battle back against this constant creep of abandonment. So her parents, if they would go on a trip, she would absolutely panic. She was always worried about them leaving her and abandoning her. She had like obsessive relationships with her peers when she was a teenager because she always felt like there was never enough. She could never get enough connection. She never had a strong bond with her social mother, who was not her genetic mother or her birth mother. She was just a very wealthy woman. But she was a woman, right? So isn't that it? Kids just need mothers.
She's a stranger.
She was a stranger, a biological genetic stranger,
Wow.
who never really connected. Like, she's like, we just didn't have any kind of bond. I always wanted one. I craved one, but it just wasn't there. Like, there really is something from the mother's perspective of,
when did your friend find out? When did she find out that this was not her mother?
She suspected, because her mother was a lot older than the other mothers, but they did not tell her. And then she learned about what surrogacy was when she was 17 and realized that must be it. Because I've never seen pictures of my mother pregnant. And I know that I was born in Kentucky. And then it was right when the internet came in. So she looked up Kentucky and she realized that Kentucky at that point was a place where there was a huge fertility clinic. And she learned what surrogacy was. And she goes, that's it.
No way. So she just always had a hunch.
She knew that something was wrong, but didn't know what it was until she was 17, and then ended up taking a DNA test and finding some of her half siblings.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, her story's been out there. She was on with Allie Beth Stuckey. She's done. She now is the spokesperson for the global movement to ban surrogacy worldwide, the Casablanca Declaration, of which I'm an original signer. So, she's really incredible.
I'd be interested to know what other kind of big Christian thought leaders and apologists didn't sign that. Just like a bunch of people didn't sign the Manhattan Declaration. Which was when Chuck Colson started to see what was coming down with the likely redefinition of marriage and some of this stuff. Like a lot of people chose not to sign that. Like people that would surprise you, or maybe not because you know about Big Eva. But I'm excited for your film. I'm going to Rome here imminently, Katie, and Italy. I mean, Giorgia Meloni's kind of a baller. They're pushing back against the surrogacy. And some of the trans mania, it's pretty encouraging.
It is encouraging, and she has taken so much heat for this. And it's interesting because the headlines are, Giorgia Meloni bans gay people from becoming parents. And I'm like, nope, biology did that. Biology banned you from being parents. What Giorgia Meloni is saying is you can't purchase children from abroad and bring them back to Italy. And by the way, it's not just gay parents. She's like, nobody can do this. And that's the right way to go. Because Greece, just this last week, also announced, Greece has had some major problems with surrogacy, especially there was a huge scandal in Crete last year of sort of, medical fertility malpractice scandals taking place and multi-country kind of hopping to try to get a child into countries that ban surrogacy. So Greece has now banned surrogate children for single and same-sex men. And I'm like, now go the Meloni step and ban it for everybody. Because like we talked about, like there's no universe where the child goes home with a heterosexual or a homosexual couple, whether it's paid or altruistic, whether it's genetic or traditional. There's no scenario where kids don't have to suffer through surrogacy. They're always going to suffer through surrogacy. And it is something that should be banned across the world.
Katie, do you want to know what my hunch is for why Georgia Maloney's such a baller?
Speak.
Because she grew up going to Hobbit camps and was shaped by the imagination of Tolkien and was a total Lord of the Rings nerd. So she knew real evil when she saw it. Did you know that?
That's incredible.
She's a total nerd. She started going to Hobbit camps as a kid, totally shaped by the imagination and the metaphysics of Middle Earth. And that's why I think she has some of that moral clarity.
There you go. The power of godly fiction.
Yeah, right. Oh, my goodness. I had Dr. George Grant, my mentor, on the show recently, and we were talking about these attempts in the UK to ban Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and George Orwell and stuff, because they're saying it creates ultra-right extremists. And it's like, yeah, I think you just mean like common sense realists, and that's what you're afraid of. We probably have to land the plane here soon, but I just want to return really quickly before we say bye to you to Orchid Incorporated here. So if children can be bought and sold, then why not manufactured? I mean, I said one time you came on the show, the Lord just gave me a thought. I said, if abortion's healthcare, then what did I say? Then selling children is capitalism. If killing babies is healthcare, then selling them is capitalism. If we have no right to life, then you have no right to anything else, including the right to not be bought and sold and manufactured. Yeah. So this all makes sense. Like this is a natural, unfortunate unfolding and extrapolation of the initial bad ideas. I mean, it just is, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but I see this, Katie, and I just go, okay, so we've come full circle. The left is back in the business of eugenics, just like all the weirdy, kooky, leftist, progressive forefathers were all behind you. Eugenics was not a conservative ideology. Now, unfortunately, some conservatives in the early 20th century did fall prey to eugenics, like Teddy Roosevelt and some people that would surprise you were starting to be kind of down with some of the Sanger eugenic ideals. But by and large, it was a Rockefeller, it was a Darwinian left-wing phenomena. And now, Planned Parenthood has taken Sanger's name off of the building, right? They've said that she was a eugenicist, and that's really bad. And now the left is like, let's design babies and allow parents to filter out of the development of the children the traits that they think are really bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and you're like, what? We're back to eugenics, but we're also back to buying and selling humans. I mean, like, right. We had all kinds of, Southern Democrats that were standing on the side of slavery. And, I know the motivations are very different a lot of the time, but functionally, that's what it is. Like, this is a marketplace of children. And we often talk about the contrast between adoption, properly understood. I understand there's problems in the adoption world as well. But the whole safeguard system of adoption is to ensure that money never flows from adoptive parents to the birth parents, right? Like if my husband and I, during our process of adopting our son, if any of the $25,000 that we paid throughout that whole process, if any of it ever went to his genetic parents or his birth mother, everything would come to a screeching halt. And that would no longer be an adoption, right? That would be child trafficking. The money that we paid went to the FBI to background check us, our home study agency to come and investigate and interview our children and look at the electrical sockets and examine our physical exams and look at our financial reports. And it included, the Chinese government looking at our profile and the United States evaluating us and determining whether or not we could bring a foreign child into the United States. I mean, like, it was all a screening process to ensure that, in essence, my husband and I were going to love Benjamin as if he had been born to our family. None of it was going to trade money for somebody relinquishing their parental rights. But that's what surrogacy is. In fact, the other headline that I know you kind of wanted to talk about was this Michigan Family Protection Act that just went into law this week, where Michigan went from being the only state that criminalized paid surrogacy to now they are one of the most progressive when it comes to commercial surrogacy. And what is it? What is the big thing that they're celebrating? They're celebrating a pre-birth order, which is in essence saying you are going to relinquish your parental rights before the child is born. And you're going to do it because we're paying you. Yeah. So that is direct payments from the intended parents to the birth parent. That in the adoption world is categorically a form of trafficking. The other thing is, in adoption, you don't ever have a woman that can relinquish her parental rights before the baby is born. The baby's born. Even if she has an adoptive plan, the baby is born. And then she has to say, no, I really am going to do this. I really am going to relinquish my parental rights. I really am going to make this agreement to hand the child over to these adoptive parents. So it's like that really is caring for orphans. But what surrogacy is doing is it's legally creating orphans before they're even born. I mean, like these two things could not be more different.
Wow. I feel like we need a whole nother podcast now just to unpack that. I mean, I love quoting you. We fought a civil war to end the practice of buying and selling people, and now we're bringing it back in the name of progress. I mean, that quote punches like 1,000 pounds, and it's just powerful. There's so much more to say, Katie. So much more to talk about. Offline, I want you to tell me more about your film. Guys, go support them before us. We got to land the plane. Look at that, right almost on the hour. But Katie, bless you, praying for you, telling people to support you. Olivia and I support them before us. Guys, keep it up. Stay safe. Don't get lynched by a mob. And hey, congrats on your Jordan Peterson appearance as well.
Thanks so much. Thanks for letting me chat with you and your listeners again. I'm so grateful for your bold voice that is going in all the different places where children are under threat, including abortion.
Amen. We'll see you soon, friend.
Great. Thanks.
Well, guys, there's nothing more to say. There's nothing more to say. Go to them before us. Pick up Katie's books. Support them. And now you know what's coming down the pike if people don't wake up. Until next time, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.